Hello everyone, this is Miss Casey with Ebo Kids Art Academy. Welcome to another December daily draw. This is day 13 and today we are drawing hot cocoa. Now on my table here you can see a sample of what we're going to be creating today, and here we have a nice hot warm cup of cocoa in a beautiful winter mug, and then you see the mittens. You can tell it's hot because they have mittens on to keep their hands safe, but also it gives you that winter feeling. So I'm super excited to be doing this daily draw with you guys. So let's go ahead and get started with our drawing. Okay, so for our drawing steps, we're going to take out a piece of paper, or if you have a sketchbook that you've been using, you can go ahead and get your sketchbook. And then once you have your paper in front of you, make sure to number it 13. Again, this is day 13 today. All right. Now, once you have that number on your paper, you're going to take out your pencil. You should always be doing your drawings with a pencil. However, I'm going to be showing you in Sharpie so you can see my lines a little bit clearer. All right, friends, so let's go ahead and get started with our cup of hot cocoa. So to start, we are going to draw the mittens that are holding, the hands that are holding the cup. Now, of course, we don't see a person or a body connected to the hands, but we know what they are and why. So to start, we're going to come on the left side. And however wide you make these hands, that's going to determine how big your cup is. So you do want to make sure that you have a good amount of space between each hand, so that way you have enough room for your big mug of cocoa. So on the left side here, I'm going to draw a short rainbow for the top of my thumb on this left hand. And then on that left side, I'm going to continue that line curving down like a letter C and bringing it across to the bottom, again like a letter C. Then I'm going to start curving it up like a backward C and bringing it over to connect to the bottom of my thumb at the top. Okay? So now that I have that mitten for the left side of my cup, the left hand, I'm going to come over to the right. Now it's going to be higher a little bit. They're not perfectly at the same spot. If you do want them to be at the same spot, that's up to you. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to start mine a little bit higher just so it doesn't look perfect. And I'm again going to start with a rainbow line for the thumb. Then instead of bringing my curve, my mitten straight down with the curve of my thumb, I'm going to bring it out a little bit more to the right so it kind of has this extra curve. And then I'm going to curve that down like a backward C, bring it around, and you want it to kind of end at the same spot. Of course, this one's a little bit higher, but you don't want one hand to be bigger than the other. And you're just going to keep curving that around to come over and connect up to the bottom of the thumb on the right. Okay, so now you have a mitten on the left, mitten on the right, you have your two hands. So now let's go ahead and draw the cup that the hands are holding. Now we're going to start with the top of the cup, and we're going to go from thumb to the inside of our right hand. So on the left side where the thumb is, you're going to draw a curved line like a letter U, nice and stretched out to reach the other side of the hand, and that's going to be the start of our opening at the top of the cup. Now before we actually draw the back side of that opening, we want to add some goodies inside. Now you can follow along with me, or you can kind of think about other things that you might want in your hot cocoa drink. Do you like having marshmallows in your hot cocoa? Do you like a peppermint kind of taste? So I'm going to be adding marshmallows and a candy cane to my hot cocoa. But if you want to change it up and you want to do other toppings or other things that you like to drink with your hot cocoa, you can add it instead. For my marshmallows, I'm going to make them look really big and take up a good amount of space inside the drink. So you have about from hand to hand, that's how much space you have from the sides of your cup. So on the left side here, I'm going to add a nice big flat oval for the top of one marshmallow. And it's a little tilted. I'm going to have some varieties, some straight up and down, some over to the top, because as you know, if marshmallows are floating in the water, it's not always perfectly up and down. So once I have that oval, I'm going to draw two lines that come down to the bottom where the start of the cup is. But before I draw this right one, I'm actually going to have another marshmallow coming up at the bottom. And I'm going to draw those 2 lines here. Okay, and then I'm also going to have some little bubbles. If you've had hot cocoa before, you know sometimes there's little like bubbles at the very top because it's so hot and creamy. So I'm going to have some bubbles kind of popping out of my cup. So whatever's going in front, you want it to overlap your objects. So what that means is that you don't want to see any lines going inside the front objects. So you want to make sure to draw the front objects first and then add any other items behind that so that way you don't have to erase any lines. So I'm going to go to the front down here and add another small marshmallow up in the front. Draw my lines that come down to connect to the bottom in the cup, and then right behind I'm going to add another nice big marshmallow and draw my lines for the sides. And then I'm also going to add some more little curved lines for the bubbles in the hot cocoa. And then right behind on this right side here, I'm going to have a candy cane kind of flipping over on this right side. So right behind my small little marshmallow, I'm going to draw a nice big rainbow line or candy cane shape. On the right, draw a curved line for the bottom. And then for the inside, I'm just going to curve that over again and bring that down till I'm done. So now I have my candy cane. So whatever you decided to add inside of your cocoa, once you have all of those objects inside, you're just going to draw the back wherever you see it. So I'm going to see the back side of my drink on the left from the hand to my object. And then if you have any space, you want to draw your line connecting from one object to that other object, wherever you would see it. So you want to imagine you have a nice big oval. Okay, you can draw that with your pencil and just erase inside those lines to help you. Or if you're able to kind of imagine that line going behind, then you can just add that line wherever, as long as you don't draw inside of your objects. Okay? So once you have that back side of your drink, next we're going to draw the sides. And we don't want to draw through our mittens, so we're just going to come down to the bottom. Make sure you know where the sides are. So again, you can kind of imagine where that oval is. There's one side here. If my oval was over here, it'd end right here. So I'm going to come down to the bottom of my mittens where those sides would be and draw 2 diagonal lines coming down. And once they reach about the same point, I'm going to curve it down at the bottom and connect. Okay, so now I have my cup. Now if you want to add in a handle, you can definitely add a handle. I'm just going to leave mine as simple cup, no handle, and that's why the mittens are holding it nice and tight. So that's going to be my cup there. And now also, if you would like, you can add in some extra details. So we have our mittens, we have our cup of hot cocoa, but if you want to add extra details, get creative, you can definitely do that. Maybe you want a pattern or a design on the cup. I'm going to be adding a snowflake. Maybe you want a pattern or a design on the mittens. I'm going to add just some simple stripes. So again, you can have fun and decide what it is you'd like. However, if you did draw a candy cane, you also want to make sure you have those curved lines for the stripes on your candy cane. And you do want to make sure that they're curved because your candy cane is a curved object. So I'm just curving up like a rainbow. And then once I reach the side, I'm going to just kind of keep curving down. Okay, now that I have the candy cane, I'm going to go ahead and add some curved lines on my mittens for stripes. And again, because this is a curved object, we want those curved lines. Okay, once I have those stripes, I can also add in another little detail, maybe some polka dots in between each stripe. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the left, have the same pattern. And again, you want to curve those lines if you are adding stripes because it is a curved object. And you can do the same pattern in your mittens. Okay, now once you have that pattern For your mittens, if you'd like, again, to also add a design or a pattern on your cup, you can do that. I recommend not going too crazy. You don't want to add too much because you will have to fill this in later as well. I'm going to be using watercolors, so I want to keep it very simple because with watercolors, it can be tricky to get very small details. So I'm going to add in a snowflake. Now, if you know how to draw a snowflake, your snowflake doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but if you don't know how to draw a snowflake, you can go ahead and follow along with me. I'm going to be making mine a little bit more 3D rather than simple lines. So I'm going to start with a short little rectangle at the top and then draw 2 diagonal lines coming out. Draw another rectangle out from those diagonal lines and then bring those diagonal lines down. Add 2 more smaller rectangles at the bottom and then bring those lines down. And then I'm going to go ahead and add 2 more diagonal lines at the bottom, 2 small rectangles, 1 at the top and 2 on the sides, and then bring that down. Okay, little rectangle at the top and bring it down. So basically what I'm doing is I'm making a more block version of a snowflake that looks a little bit like this. It's like a plus sign. Okay, and then it has an X in the middle that is shorter. Then you have a big V, small v, big V, small v, small v, small v on all the little ones, big V and small v and all the big ones. So it looks a little bit like that. However, I'm just making it a little bit more 3D with actual shapes. So that way I can color it in. Okay? So now that I have those two, I'm going to draw the lines for the sides. Small rectangle, big rectangle, top, big rectangle, small. So that's the big V, small v, side, small v. I don't have room for my big V. Okay, again, there's my snowflake there. And add the smaller one here. And then small v, big V, top, small v, big V, and top of my snowflake. So there I have my snowflake design on my cup, and my cup of hot cocoa is all done and drawn in. Okay, so again, you guys can definitely have, feel free to get creative and have fun decorating it however you'd like. But we are officially done with the drawing of our hot cocoa, so wonderful job. Now, once you are done drawing it in, and if you need a little bit more time, please feel free to pause and continue on with us when you're ready. But once you are done, you're going to then need to outline. Now, when you're outlining, you can just simply outline with a regular Sharpie or permanent marker, and your outline will look a little bit like this. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline with a thick and a thin Sharpie. So I'm going to go ahead, I've already done that. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Now, if you need a little bit more time to outline, again, go ahead and pause the video and press play when you are ready. But when you are done with your outlining, your picture might look a little bit like mine. Again, I do have my thinner outline marks with my Sharpie. I did also add a couple of little action lines around some of the areas. That's just a style preference. You can definitely add that if you'd like. I just have them around some of the edges, but you don't have to add them if you don't want to. So that's just a style preference, but I do have all of my details, most of my details outlined with my thin Sharpie. And then I wanted my mittens to kind of stand out, be bold, so I used my thicker Sharpie. So if you have two different size Sharpies and you want to change up the line widths, you can do that just like you see here on mine. But go ahead and outline it, and then when you're done, you can press play and continue on with us for our coloring steps. All right, friends. Now for our coloring steps, I'm going to be using some watercolor and also marker and then adding water to the marker. So we're going to start with our marker steps first. Here I have my markers. Okay. Now If you remember, we do have a specific color scheme that we are using for our daily draws this month. We're going to be using red, green, a little bit of blue, black, and white. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to add in some color on my mittens and my candy cane with my markers. Okay, now for my candy cane, I want red and white stripes. So I want to determine where my light source is going to be coming from. Well, I want my light source to come from the left, so all of the right and bottom areas of my objects are going to be darker. And the left areas and top areas are going to be lighter. So I'm going to go to my candy cane, and along the right bottom stripe here, and the bottom of that stripe, and since we're going to be adding some water to this, you do want to make it a little bit thicker than a normal shadow. But you're going to add in a little stripe there for a shadow. And then when we add water, that's going to end up being your darker area, and you'll pool some of that ink with the water to make a medium and lighter color. So now that I have that, I'm going to skip over this next stripe because that will be white. And then I'm going to come along the bottom and add a nice thick stripe for the shadow on that area. And again, you do want it to be thick because you need enough ink to spread out to the rest of the area. Then I'm going to skip a stripe and come down to the right side of that candy cane. Again, make it pretty thick, and then skip and come down to the last stripe. However you started that, if you decided to make this red and then do it the other way, you can go ahead and do that. Or maybe you want different color for your candy canes, that's all up to you. But now that I've added in the shadow area with my red, for white, I'm going to add in some shading as well, and I'm going to be using a gray for my shading. So now I'm going to take my gray marker, and along the bottom here, I'm going to go ahead and add in my shadow. Now I want it to be as thick as I see on my red areas, and then I'm going to add in that nice thick shadow area. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and do that on the next stripe that I see, again matching that thickness with my red. And then go into the next stripe that I see, match that thickness. So now I have all my shadows. Right now it just looks like a big block of color, but when we go in and add our water, we'll be able to spread that out. So now that we have our shadow areas on our candy cane, next we want to do the same thing for our mittens. Now if you don't really like this style or this technique with marker and water, you can just use your markers and fully color in those areas that we're using marker with instead, or just use any other materials that you want. You can just fully do it all in watercolor or fully do it all in marker. That's all up to you. If you do your candy canes and you are having red and white stripes, you still want to just keep your white stripes with a little bit of shadow. You don't want to fill it in completely unless you do want it a different color rather than white. But for white, you just add a shadow. All right, friends, so now I'm going to do my mittens, and I'm going to take my green, and I'm going to go right along the right side and toward the bottom and add my shadow. Now again, I want this pretty thick because I do want to have enough ink to be able to spread around. Okay, so I've outlined where I want my shadow to be, and then I'm going to fill that in. And then I'm going to go around my designs or my pattern that I added in my mittens, because once my water is dry, I'm going to go in with just a basic marker and fill those areas in since they're so small. Don't want to add water to them. Now if you have any of your design inside your shadow area, just go over it the best that you can. All right. So there we go, I have my dark area. And again, you can make this as thick of a shadow as you want. Okay, so now that I have my shadow on my right area, I'm going to go ahead and do that on my left. Now for my left area, I have a lot more of my light coming from the top left, so I'm not going to have too big of a shadow. I'm going to have it mainly on this right side and at the bottom. So I'm going to start right here on the right and get thicker and thicker as I come down, going around my design. And then you can make that thicker if you'd like. Again, we are going to need a good amount of ink to be able to spread it out to the rest of our mitten. Okay, there we go. So there's my shadow areas. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring out my watercolor bucket, my water bucket, and my brush. I'm going to use a medium brush because it's a small area. And I'm just going to take my pure water and spread out the ink that I've added. Okay, so I'm going to do this first in my large mitten areas. So I'm going to take just pure water, dip that, wipe off, and then from that darker area, I'm just going to start pulling out some of that ink from the green of my marker. I don't want to fully push it out all the way to the end. I want to get a good medium area. If you accidentally fill in some of your design, that's okay. You can cover it when you fill in with your marker. Okay, so I'm just pulling that out, getting a good area for my medium color, making sure that it's nicely blended. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and let that sit. Get a good amount of medium area covered. And then I'm going to take more pure water and take the rest of my medium color and add in a little bit of a highlight. So now I'm going to just clean off my brush, take a little bit more water, make sure it's nice and pure, and then take what's left of my ink and spread it into my lighter area to make it even lighter. So it may look like white. Once it dries, you can kind of see a little bit more of that lighter tint of color, whether you use green or a different color, maybe red, maybe blue. Okay, now once you added in that, there you go. You have your dark, medium, and light. Then you're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. Now, we don't have as much dark color to spread out, so we're going to have a much lighter mitten on that side. If you don't really like the look of it, once it dries, we can just take pure watercolor and make it look a little different. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and take my pure water, take my dark shadow area, and add in my medium. And that's going to fill in a good majority of my mitten here. And again, you can go right over those design areas, the pattern that you have, because you can cover it once it's dry. You'll be able to cover it up with marker. Okay, so bring your medium color up a little bit. Make sure to spread that out nicely. And then once you reach that left side and top area, you're going to take a little bit more just of the pure water and let that be a little bit lighter up at the top. Okay, so there I have my mittens. Again, it's a little bit darker along the bottom edges, the right side, bottom, and then it gets lighter as it comes up. It's a little bit more medium in the middle and lighter as it hits where the light source is. So again, if you did paint over your pattern just like I did, that's okay. We'll be able to paint or color over that again once it's dry and we get back into our marker area steps. So once you have that, now I'm going to clean off my brush, and I'm going to do the same thing for my candy cane. So I'm going to go right where my shadow is, my pure marker, and then push that shadow into the rest of my candy cane. However, that's for the bottom one here. Don't really have much light source touching it. But for the rest of them, I'm going to leave a little bit of the edge that's closest to the light unpainted, or as we did here, a very, very light amount. So I'm going to take my gray, push that up. And again, I don't really have much light touching this side, so I'm going to push it up all the way to the top. Let that sit. Okay, go back to my red, push that up from the red into the medium color. And then as I come up to the top, I'm going to leave it white, unpainted. And then just take more pure water and just lightly fill in that unpainted area. So it has a little tint of ink, but it's much lighter. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to actually just continue on with my red areas first, and then I'll move on to the gray. So I'm going to push that red out to my medium area, leave some area white. Take my pure water, not too wet, and fill in the remaining white area. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for my gray area. Push that gray out, leave a little area white. And since this is a red and white candy cane, I'm actually just going to leave that area white so it can stand out. So take that ink, push it out to my medium, and leave my left side white. Okay, so there's my candy cane. I've added in my water. So now that we've done that marker and water technique, now we're going to go ahead and switch over to our regular watercolors. And we'll bring back our markers in just a moment. So now, actually, I did forget one step with my markers. I'm going to take my gray, and I'm going to add in a little bit of a shadow in my snowflake. So on the right side and bottom areas of all of my snowflake, I'm going to add in a shadow. Again, it's going to be on that right side and bottom areas. So it's on the bottom and the right, bottom, right, bottom, bottom. Okay, now that I've added that shadow on my snowflake, it kind of brings it out a little bit more. It pushes it away from the cup and makes it look a little bit more 3D. So that's just a fun little extra step that you can do. You don't have to, but it does definitely brighten up that design if you added a snowflake. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and clean off my medium brush. And I'm going to fill in my cup. Now, everyone's cup is going to be a little different, so I want to do that with you guys just in case, because all of the details that you have inside, that's just going to depend on what you drew and how you want to color it. I will show you how I color mine, but everyone's going to be different. But the cup, I'm going to show you because everyone has a cup. So I'm going to be using blue to stick to my color scheme and have a nice bright blue cup with my red and greens. So I'm going to take my blue here, and I'm going to do the same technique that I did with my markers, only doing it with my watercolors first instead. So I'm going to take my blue, and I'm going to add on the right side here a nice shadow area. It's going to be darker along the bottom and right areas. I'm just going to blend that in. Now if you feel like your dark area is not so dark, you can always get a little bit more paint. Make it nice and dark. Add that in. And I would recommend making your darker area pretty thick because next we're just going to take pure water and just spread out what's left of our dark area. So you want to make sure you have a good amount, not too much paint, but you do want to make sure it's nice and dark, a good amount, so that way you can spread that out. And then as you go around your design, just do the best that you can. You might paint inside of it, but that's okay. So I'm just going to take pure water now and bring out what I have in my shadow area and paint in the rest of my cup up till I get to the left side. So this is going to need to spread out pretty far. So I'm just going to take my paint. And if it doesn't really spread that much from your shadow area, you can always just get more water on your brush. Get that same color and just get a little bit of that color so it's a little bit lighter. And that can help you fill in, because it's a pretty big area you need to fill in with your medium. So your dark might not spread that well. Okay. So now I'm just going to continue spreading out into my medium area. It's going to get lighter and lighter as I have less paint on my brush. But that's okay. Just go ahead and spread it out all the way to the left side. Because as you get into that lighter area, you want the left side of your cup to be nice and light. And you can add in a little bit of some more color and go right along the left edge. Just add a little bit of that light color on the left so that way your highlight can stand out nicely. You have a nice bright white on that left side. And then just make sure to go back, blend out that medium and dark area pretty nicely so you don't have a harsh line between your dark and your medium. So you can see now it's a nice gradient. I have my dark, medium, and now my lighter area. If your dark color kind of got a little lost and you want it to be a little bit darker, you can always go back into your dark, less water, more paint, and paint that back in, get a little bit darker again. Make sure to just brush it out so it's not so harsh and blend that out. Okay, once you do that, you can also try and go in underneath, get a little bit darker underneath your mitt, because as the hands hold on to the cup, you would have a little bit of a darker shadow area where the hand touches your mug. So you can go right underneath, get a little bit of a darker color. Okay, and you can do the same thing just slightly underneath on the right side, not too big. Just gonna add in a little bit of a shadow on that left area. Okay, so now we have our cup filled in. Again, you just try your best to go around your design, your snowflake, whatever you have, but your color should be light enough as you come into that area, so it shouldn't affect your snowflake too much. Okay, if you do need to blot it, you can take a paper towel and just blot to lighten up that area and you won't really be able to see it. But now that you have that darker color, you have your shadow on your mug and you have filled that in. Next, we're going to go ahead and add in some detail and color in our cup. Now, if you have any of your cup showing behind your details inside, you can take that darker color. So that means more paint, less water. Get it nice and dark and paint in that background area. Because anytime you have something that goes inside, that's usually much darker. Okay. Now if you need a smaller brush, you can go and switch to a smaller brush. Just try to get in those little areas. Okay, then once you have that inside of your cup filled in, I'm going to switch to my smaller brush here. And I'm going to add in a little bit of color to my marshmallows. Now, since my hot cocoa is brown, I'm going to add some shading and color with my brown. Now, brown isn't one of our holiday color schemes for our daily draws. It is a neutral color, though, and hot cocoa is brown, so you just got to do it. So I'm going to take some brown here. Make sure I don't have too much water. And using the tip of my brush very lightly, I'm going to go along the right areas at the top and just add in a little bit of shading along the top of my marshmallows, and then also along the right side, and just kind of go back and forth, a little bit of color into my marshmallows on the right. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, once I do that, I'm going to do the same thing on all the rest of my marshmallows. Kind of curve it, get it on the right at the top here, and then along the right side on the front of the marshmallow. Just kind of have a little zigzag shadow. Give it a little bit of color. Okay. Once I've done that, if you need to make it a little bit darker, I'm going to keep mine pretty light. I don't want it to look too brown or maybe like toasted. I do want to make sure it just looks like a little bit of a color change from the color of the drink, the cocoa powder. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to take a little bit more brown. And I'm going to add in, for these little circular bubbles, I'm going to add in a little bit of shading. I want the right bottom corners to be dark. And then I'm just going to take pure water and get that lighter and lighter as I come up to a little circle, and leave that circle white so it gives a little highlight. Okay, and then if you kind of lose your dark area, you can always go back in, get a little bit more dark, and re-outline that. Go back in, get more of that dark to show. Now I know it's a small little detail, you may not be able to see it well, but hopefully you can kind of see how that makes it look a little bit rounded, more 3D. You can see over here, I have that little white sparkle or highlight at the top. Okay, so that's going to be our cup. And then if you want to have fun, you can even make it look like the bubbles maybe popped. It's going all around. You can take a little bit of your brown and add in some specks along the top and just have fun with it. May not really show up that well. You can have little bubbles kind of popping out on the edges. And this is more of like a style preference. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you can have fun with it. And if they're a little too dark, you can go in with just pure water and go right on top and make it a little bit lighter. You can make some bigger. So it's just up to you if you want to do that. Okay, you guys can kind of see how I did that on there. Did it on here. You can also do it on the top of the marshmallow. Okay. Again, just kind of have fun. Get your details, color it how you want. And then once you're done, again, you want to make sure that your mittens are fully and completely dry. Then you can go back in with the marker and color right on top of any details that you have. Color that in solid with your marker, and you'll be able to see those details. And if you didn't like the way your marker and water technique came out, you can go back in with a regular watercolor and fix that up. But I hope you guys had fun with this project, this daily draw, and learned a couple of new techniques, had fun with your marker and water, and also have a really fun daily draw to show off. So thank you guys so much for joining in. I hope you had fun, and please make sure to share your artwork with us once you are done. And come back tomorrow for another daily draw. We're getting closer and closer to the end. So wonderful job, everyone. My name is Miss Casey, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye-bye.